Shall we make a start? I think we've got most people that have joined in now. Um, so good morning, everyone. Just before we start, a couple of housekeeping points to mention for the webinar. We've enabled Zoom's auto transcription. So you should see these automatically appear on your screen. If you'd prefer to turn them off, you can do so by clicking on the live transcription button and then hide subtitle. Cameras and microphones for participants are switched off. You can communicate via the chat and Q&A features. And in anticipation of the Q&A session at the end, please submit any questions via the Q&A feature throughout the webinar and use the thumb icon next to questions to upvote any questions that you particularly want to be answered. We'll be sharing the slides with those of you who have provided your email address on sign up, and at the very end, a link will automatically be shared to a survey to give you a chance to provide your feedback on the webinar, which we'd greatly appreciate. Just before we start, can I just check, James and Waljit, you're able to see the slides? Can you see those? Brilliant, excellent. So then we'll make a start. So good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us for our live webinar, providing an introduction to the new NIHR Senior Clinical and Practitioner Research Award. Just to introduce the speakers today, we've got Professor Waljit Dhillo, Dean of the NIHR Academy, Dr. James Fenton, NIHR Assistant Director for Integrated Pathways, and myself, Richard Milham, Senior Programme Manager in the Integrated Pathways team. During the webinar, we'll be providing some background and an introduction to the award. We'll offer some brief guidance on making an application. We'll also outline some key differences between other similar awards. And finally, we'll have a Q&A session. So to start off, I'll hand over to Waljit, who's going to set the scene with some background to the award.
Great, thanks, Richard, and thanks to Richard and James, who have from the NIHR Academy team, who have basically put all of this together. So very grateful for that. We're very excited about this scheme, and I'm just going to give you a very quick overview of kind of how the scheme arose. So in April this year, the NIHR Academy announced new initiatives to expand the training and career development for health and social care professionals, where we thought there was a lack of opportunities. And it builds on the strategic areas of focus set out within NIHR's Best Research for Best Health, the next chapter, which outlines NIHR's operational priorities, and that remains live. And so the idea, basically, I won't go through all the details, was to create new initiatives with extra money for a range of opportunities from undergraduate to postdoctoral level, with a focus on underrepresented professions, to ensure a diverse range of people enter a successful in a career in research. And there's a lack of opportunities at the moment. So the key element of this is attracting and supporting underrepresented groups into a research career, and giving them an opportunity and a leg up to be able to have a career in research, starting from kind of undergraduate level. Next one, please, Richard. So as I said, if we're going to do anything, then we need money, and despite the current fiscal climate, the Department of Health and Social Care awarded it as another additional £30 million per year spend to increase research opportunities for a range of new schemes for more healthcare professionals to be involved in research. So that really is, I think, a great credit to the Department of Health and Social Care, being quite visionary despite the financial climate we're in for an additional spend. So the support aims to help people become highly skilled researchers and research leaders of the future is the aim. And this will also have the effect of enhancing staff retention within the NHS. And it also supports a key priority, which is the RRG programme, the UK Clinical Resilience, Recovery and Growth, to develop a sustainable and supported research workforce that can deliver research that's of patient benefit in the UK. Next one, please. So, as I said, I'm not going to go through these in great details, but there's a range of schemes that are coming live as we speak. Having the ability for undergraduates to be able to access NIHR's new National Engagement Programme, It's called Insight. Those applications are just closed, and 12 have been recommended for funding around the country, one in each region. Early career researchers will have more access to internships and bursaries. We're in the process of setting up some regional research leadership offices, and then moving on to the current scheme, which we're incredibly excited about, which is a postdoctoral offer really for people who have done a PhD. And I think James or Richard's going to move on to give you some more details on that.
Yeah, thanks very much, Waljit. So, as Waljit's highlighted, one of the new initiatives is the Senior Clinical and Practitioner Research Award. So we'll give you an overview of that now. So the award is designed to offer support to senior clinicians and practitioners at the postdoctoral level, particularly those working in underrepresented professions and specialisms. The award offers protected academic time for individuals to undertake training and development and engage in research activities. And we also want to highlight that this isn't a one-time competition. We very much plan to run further competitions. As mentioned, the focus here is very much around clinicians and practitioners, i.e. practitioner academics. And while there is a list of professions highlighted here, applicants working in other underrepresented areas are very much welcome to apply. When completing an application, there's an opportunity to highlight that. Further details are also available in the guidance notes on the NIHR website. So awards can be taken at between 2 to 5 years with flexibility for options when working less than full time. Funding covers the award holder's salary for the protected time of the award. And while the award doesn't fund a substantive research project, funding is provided to contribute to the costs of training and development, which would depend on the needs of the applicant, and establishing new collaborations and activity to support further research funding applications, such as collecting pilot data, etc. We also want to share a few details on the first round of the competition for the award, which is currently open to applications. All the details I'll cover here are available in the guidance notes on the website, so please do read those in full prior to making an application. So the competition launched on the 2nd of October, and for at least the first round, we've allowed for a fairly long window for applications with a deadline of the 23rd of January 2024. Following the assessment of applications, we're hoping to notify applicants of the outcome in April or around April, with the aim of award starting from May 2024. Applications are submitted via our online system known as Aramis. This slide includes a screenshot overview of the different sections of the form, which we've tried to streamline as much as possible. As you can see, there's various different sections of the form, including a CV section, a place to detail proposed research activities, and a section to include a detailed breakdown of your proposed budget. We also want to highlight the contextual factors section of the form. So applicants working in other underrepresented areas and disciplines that aren't directly listed in the guidance notes should highlight those circumstances in that section. And just to reiterate, the guidance notes offer a lot of detail and instruction on all aspects of the application form. Another important aspect to highlight is around hosting arrangements. So the award offers flexibility with how that can work. Applicants must propose a lead host organisation, which should be either an NHS organisation or other provider of health or care services in England, or an HEI based in England, so higher education institution. Where applicants are proposing an HEI host, then they must also specify a partner organisation, which would be the NHS organisation or other provider of health or care services in England. It's perhaps worth mentioning that host organisations are asked to provide a statement of support as part of the application process, so please do ensure that you've made them aware of that before including them in your application. And additionally, applicants will need to include details of proposed mentorship on both the professional practice and academic sides. You'll need to include at least one of each. So just briefly now, Waljit's going to share some insights around what the committee will be looking for in applications.
Okay, so I've seen some questions come in, and those are really helpful, so keep sending those in. As Richard said, this is a new scheme, so we're refining it as we go, if you like. But we have got some very specific things that we want to fund, and the main thing really is underrepresented groups and underrepresented professions. So as Richard said, we've given some ideas of what areas we think are underrepresented, but there may be other. If you think you're from an underrepresented group, please do apply. So we're interested in having people from all parts of health and social care and all parts of the country apply and hopefully be successful. So you obviously need to have a clinical role, but that is in the broadest sense of clinical in terms of health and social care. So we're looking for breadth. In terms of appropriateness and experience, it's really postdoctoral. We've left this very open. We did think about, and then I've seen in the chat there's something about senior. Senior basically for this means postdoctorally. So you can be anywhere postdoctorally, all the way up to, you know, fairly senior in your career. We're trying to make this as inclusive as possible rather than exclusive for that postdoctoral gap, really, where we think there's a big problem in terms of people being able to continue their research after their PhD. So there is a commitment expected of the applicant to a continued career involving research. We want this to be a pump priming 5 years or so as a maximum. There will be an expectation, or we would encourage the host organisation to support you in a longer term career, however that might be. We specifically didn't mandate that the local organisation has to give you a permanent support for research, because that would be difficult to promise at this stage. But we will be looking at the applications in terms of what support the host organisation is offering at the end of the award. So at least 50% of the working week should be in clinical practice. We thought this was important so that people maintain their health and social care clinical work, as well as being able to do their research with protected time. And obviously the usual things apply: quality and appropriateness of the research activity and the training proposed, support and mentorship from the host organisation. A critical thing is obviously we're giving this money for protected research time, so we would expect that and a clear demonstration of how that's going to be achieved, because obviously we're working in a very busy NHS, and what we're trying to do is buy out people's time for them to be able to do the research and provide backfill essentially for that post. There's clearly needs to be a commitment to mentorship the next generation of healthcare practitioners. We're interested in capacity building for all healthcare professions. And as I said, we're looking for a broad professional and geographical spread of research active clinicians and practitioners. So we will be very much, we decided not to cap applications from each organisation, but we will be looking to hopefully get applications from all parts of the professions and geographical spread, so that we can fund up and down the country. Back to Richard.
Thanks, Waljit. That's really, really helpful. So just say we're conscious that there are various different awards available for people to apply for, and we wanted to just take an opportunity to highlight some of the similarities and differences between some of those. I'm just going to hand over to James now to explore that.
Thank you very much, Richard. So I've noticed a few questions in the Q&A, which we will start to answer. Can I also just encourage everyone to use the Q&A as opposed to the chat, so everyone sees them? I was happy to answer the one that did come through there. There's already been a question about what's the difference between this and, I think, the Advanced Fellowship. So we'll quickly cover some of that now, and I suspect we'll probably need to go through more of this in the Q&A session at the end, if that makes sense. So first off, as you can see on the slide here, we do have a number of postdoctoral offers we're associated with, and we're conscious we need to signpost people to the offers. So the first slide we've got over here is around our Development in Skills Enhancement Award, or the DSC. This has been a very successful postdoctoral award, available previously for people who were Academy members, i.e. had sort of Academy member award, shall we say, but we've opened this up in scope, and it's very much about some training opportunities beyond say your postdoctoral endeavour or post or discipline, shall we say. And as I said, this has been a long-term award. It's fairly short-term, but there is a difference between this and the new offer we're having today. But just be aware this is available. And also, I'll just mention it in passing. There's a very new, exciting transatlantic DSC as well, working with America, and the NIH, just to be aware. But details of all these awards are, of course, available on our website. And we're always happy to take questions, both in the Q&A here and outside the meeting. You can get in touch with our office to clarify where we think you're best signposted, or at least give advice as far as we can. If you go to the next slide, please, Richard. Okay, so one of the exciting partnerships we have as NIHR, and Waljit has been involved in the committee for a long time, is a partnership with MRC UKRI around what is called CARP, Clinical Academic Research Partnerships. And these are also postdoctoral awards. We work with MRC on this and have committed further funding to this with our partnership with DHSC, which we're very excited about. This was primarily set up a few years ago now by MRC, and has moved a focus away from medics to who are very welcome to apply, and dentists, to all healthcare professions. So I'm going to have a slide in a minute where I'll try and come to some of the difference between the CARP and the current award of advertising. But as you can see, you have to be a healthcare professional, postdoc, PhD, MD, working at a senior level. And it's very much about having a research partner to support your activity. Now, this will fund some project costs. So this is going to be some difference between this award and the one we're talking about today. And as you can see, it says MRC, we contribute, but we'll fund a proportion of your salary. We go to the next slide then, Richard. What we do here is we summarize just some of the difference between these post offers we have, including Vast Fellowship, which I did see in the Q&A. So, as you can see, SCPRA supports career development, research qualified individuals back into research, as Waljit has talked about very eloquently earlier. And we've got a scope which is very much around developing research around the NIHR remit, which we can again talk about. But we're very interested in, of course, the settings being within NHS and care settings. That's very important to us. Duration up to 5 years. There's flexibility between 2 and 5, as a lot of our postdoctoral offers. And just to be clear, it funds training, salary, and a small contribution to research activity costs. If I just move across to the middle column, CARP, as it says, the aim there, I've talked about that already. And this can allow you to undertake a specific project within a full range of both MRC and NIHR remits. So there's quite a wide range or breadth of activity in terms of research you could do there. The emphasis is very much on the university partner strength, shall we say. And again, that can be for up to 5 years. So that's been extended recently with 50% of your time. To be clear, that funds salary and research project costs. And this is the question that did come up in the QA. Obviously, we have offered advanced fellowships as an NIHR Academy, postdoctoral award, shall we say, for a good period of time for both advanced fellowship and ACAP, or our ICA scheme for nurses, midwives, allied health professionals, pharmacists, psychiatrists. And this is very much a fellowship that supports you as a person, substantial research and training package, and also a whole research project. The research for these have to be within the NIHR remit, and these can be applied for up to 5 years and fund 100% of your time. So they can be very integrated if you're a practitioner academic, and that's your desire. And these will fund full salary, including clinical, or I should say practitioner time, if we're going to be correct here, and also research costs, as we said, quite substantial research costs. So there's full scrutiny of a research project or researchers funding and training costs. So hopefully that will help clarify, and we'll be happy to take more questions around that. So I think, Richard, we've come to the end of our slides we're going to present. So
that's right. Yeah. So I will stop sharing the slides, but also thank you to both Waljit and James for your insights. So yes, we'll move on to the Q&A. Thanks very much to everyone for providing your questions. Let me just stop sharing. Brill. So the current top question that we have is, what is meant by senior in terms of eligibility? How is that assessed?
Can we say that?
Feel free.
So I think I covered this one. Senior is basically postdoctoral. So as I said, we were initially thinking we would make this a fairly senior award, but we've actually opened it up so that you can be at any point in your career, but you have to be postdoctoral.
Yep. James, I think you might be on mute.
Has to be one, didn't there? Shall we go to the next question? Thank you, Waljit, by the way. So the next question is, if you're employed by two NHS organisations and hold an honorary contract with a HEI, is it possible to have your award hosted by the HEI? And what would be the best way around this? The initial answer is yes, it would be, wouldn't it? Of course.
Yeah.
And it may be worth some discussion with us just to how to work with the two NHS organisations. I don't know if, Richard, you want to add anything to that?
I suppose for the purposes of completing the application form, there are limited options in terms of what you can enter. So you'll need to propose at least one, the HI as your host organisation, and then one of the NHS partner organisations. But then within the remainder of the form, you could explain the rest of the circumstances and clarify exactly what it is that you're looking to do.
If we move to the next, thank you, Richard.
Sure.
If we move to the next question from Jack, I believe, Jack Barrett,
Indeed.
which refers to the collaboration section. The guideline refers to new collaborations. Should the applicant have already approached these they want to collaborate with, or is this expected to be undertaken during the award? I think the answer to that is there's a section in the form which has I think a 600 word limit from memory. And I think the answer to that, Jack, is probably both, actually. It's always good to be looking for and setting up collaborations, and I'm sure Waljit and the committee will welcome to see that. But I think it's fair to say in any award or endeavour, collaborations can continue and develop as you go through your award. So I don't know if you want to add anything onto that, Waljit.
Yeah, no, I think we'd be flexible on that one. If you've got an established team you're working with, then that makes complete sense if that's the appropriate partner. But if there's a new collaboration that you want to establish, that's fine too. So this is I guess as James has alluded to with CARP and Advanced Fellowship, you have to come in with a very detailed project with all your stats, etc., etc. Here we're making it much more flexible in terms of this is about you as an individual and what you think will be useful in terms of your where you need to go next to further your research career.
Well, thank you. So the next question that we have is, can an applicant apply for an NIHR Development Skills Enhancement Award and an SCPRA and hold them concurrently?
I think that'd be a no, wouldn't it? Because the DSC is all about the DSC is a specific award to do something that will further your skill set to be able to apply for example, an advanced fellowship or this award. So the two in parallel wouldn't really make sense to me, but James and Richard might want to come in.
Yeah, no, I'd agree. It's a very good question, a very good one to ask. There's nothing to stop you applying for both, but you probably just think about what the focus might be, but you couldn't hold them concurrently. No, agree, because you can only fund so much of your time if that makes sense. But it's a very reasonable question to ask.
Brilliant. Thank you. So next question that we have is, does the research project have to be identified prior to application?
I think it would be. I mean, yeah, I think we've said no to that. It doesn't have to be, but it would be difficult to articulate in the form what you're going to do. You know, we're going to be looking at the forms and judging added value of this application to you. That's going to be the big one. Is if we fund you as an applicant, how much of an impact will this have on your award? What's the likelihood that you'll be able to do the research and continue in a research career? So those are the kind of, if you like, the bigger criteria overall that we're looking for. And so if you've got a completely blank form in what you're planning to do for the 5 years, it's going to be quite difficult to articulate in the panel to judge what you'll be doing. So whilst it doesn't need to be, you know, absolute with all of the stats and everything detailed in there, because we're not giving all the research costs. If we were giving the research costs, we want a very detailed plan. There does need to be an indication of what you'd be doing. If it's completely blank, it would be difficult to judge what the impact would be of what you're planning to do. Don't you want to add anything, James?
No, I agree with that. I think you covered it very well, Waljit, and I think your answer's been very helpful. Hopefully, the person who asked that, I'd happily can always come back in the Q&A, of course, or anyone can. Just going to say. I'll pick up the next one from Jennifer. Are staff already working in research delivery teams eligible to apply? Well, the short answer is yes, I believe, because we're trying to be, well, not trying to, we want to be as inclusive as possible. Waljit Richard might want to add something, but obviously you just need to think about what you want the award to do in your trajectory, bearing in mind the assessment criteria and what we're looking for. But absolutely, this is about being inclusive, isn't it, Waljit?
Yeah, and I think research delivery is different to this, which is this is personal research that you'll be doing to have a research career. So definitely, would be encourage applications from that group of individuals.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll just pick up the next one because this looks like a specialist one. So we might need to. So, will you finance the salary along with an additional allowance of up to £20 for training or placements? Which I suspect is a question you might want to come and clarify, just around your terms and conditions and how you work in your particular role. I don't know if you can add any more to that, Waljit.
Yeah, I mean, what we're paying this research time. So if you ask for, say, 50% for 5 years, we would pay the salary costs associated with that research time, and then the 100K is pretty flexible. And we thought about the figure, and 100K was at the upper end. We initially thought about a much smaller figure, but that at least will get people going. So the idea is there you can use that flexibly. You can use that 100K all in the first year if you want. If you've got a project that's, you can get going straight away. That could pump prime, get you pilot data to apply for an RFPB grant or something else. So we deliberately try to be as flexible as possible with that funding. It's just articulating what you're going to do with it, obviously, that would make sense.
Well. So next question we've got, I would like to apply for this award 1 day per week. At the moment, I spend 2 days per week supporting other underrepresented colleagues to become clinical academics while also managing my clinical work. Am I eligible for this position? I see this award as a complement to my actual role.
So I guess if there's 5 days a week, then if the person's already doing 2, I mean, I don't see it as a bar, but we might need to come back on that and do the maths in terms of how much clinical work would be left. And then it would be the added value of that extra day a week. So I don't think it would be a bar necessarily, and we're trying to be inclusive as we can, but it would be what would be the added value of that award compared to another award where somebody had no research time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you'd have to give some consideration to how you wanted to frame that within your application and just be clear about exactly what it was that you wanted to do in the award time as well.
Thank you both. I was going to say, should we jump to Caroline's question next? Because it's not unrelated, Caroline Alexander's, which talks about, does capacity and capability building of NIHPs count as a research activity along with the building the project for applications such as ACAFs?
I don't think it's not as research. I don't think that would count as research for the individual, would it? I mean, it's clearly a worthy thing, and it's what the three of us are doing, trying to support others. But for the purposes of this award, we're trying to develop the next cadre of research leaders with the award, so for an individual. So that's a slightly different role that might fall out the scheme. That's my impression. But
yes, and there has traditionally been research capacity building activity encouraged in some of the senior advanced ICA award, for example, the ACAF, and what's called the CLSCL. So I think there's a different dynamic there. I mean, absolutely, it's something we absolutely want to do, but probably not specifically for this award. I'd agree with you, Waljit. If that's okay. Shall we just go to the top question? Because from Ronel Mouton, which is one we have to think answer carefully, but any examples of underrepresented specialisms within the medical profession? What if the research topic addresses issues within underserved populations? So that's a great question. Obviously, the scheme is open to medics as well as all HCPs, shall we say? So we've shied away deliberately for having a list, as I think I'll bring Waljit in a minute, run out, so that we don't want to say, although we've made reference to GP, for example, we don't want to say not cardiologists. We're definitely not saying that. But we want some context to it, Waljit, don't we? I think it's fair to say.
Yeah, and I think that's the point, is what we're envisaging is, depending on the number of applications we get, 2/3 would go to non-doctors, if you like, from all aspects of health and social care, and 1/3 might go to doctors and dentists. But it would be the justification of, and that's, as James said quite nicely, of we've deliberately not been exclusive. But if, you know, it would need, let's just say we get lots of applications in from doctors in different specialties. For example, I'll make one up. Histopathology is very underrepresented, I think. I'm not a histopathologist, so I've got no bias. But that kind of thing is justifying why you as an individual it could be underrepresented as part of research, or whether your specialty is underrepresented in research, and then we will judge the applications basically depending on the number that we get in of how they score against that criteria, because that would be one of the things that we score against.
Thank you. If we go for the next question, can you apply for this and the advanced fellowship? Again, the short answer is yes, you can. There's nothing to stop you doing so. And we're conscious, as we said earlier, that there are a number of postdoc offers that we and other funders make available. I suppose what you need to think is there's a lot of endeavour for such applications, and you probably might think about the focus of what you want to apply for and put your resource and time in, and also support staff at your hosts, etc. Yeah, you just might want to think about that. The answer is you can, but you probably just think about where your focus is. I don't, again, Waljit, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, and obviously, if you were successful in both, you couldn't take up both, because that'd be more than 100% time. So, but I think you're right. We've tried to deliberately we appreciate that people who are going to be filling in these forms are full-time doing health and social care, and hence we've tried to keep the form. Hopefully, you'll see that it's relatively light touch, as in getting the most important information that we need to make the awards. Whereas an advanced fellowship is a much bigger beast in terms of, as I said, you know, a detailed research plan, stats, all of the usual stuff that would go into a full fellowship application. So, as James says, think carefully about what you apply for, because an advanced fellowship is not, I mean, this is not an insignificant amount of time, but an advanced fellowship is even more time to prepare a decent application.
Claire Smith has come in. Thank you, Claire. Is there a time limit for when you obtained your PhD? I don't believe there is. It's just a postdoctoral award. Again, we've tried to make the guidance notes as simple as possible.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, James, I think, you know, some people might be a year postdoc, some people will be 10 years postdoc. We're trying to be inclusive to say this is an opportunity, if you're recently awarded your PhD, to hopefully continue, and if you've done it a long time ago and want to get back, to be able to continue. So the panel is going to be fairly experienced, and we will be looking at people in terms of their overall research opportunity. So what we're trying to move away from all our research NIHR panels for fellowships is rather than just throw the CV down the stairs and the person with the highest number of publications wins, which has traditionally been kind of how it's been. It's very much about what the research opportunity you've had and what you've done with it and what the outputs are. So if you've had 0 postdoc opportunities compared to somebody who's been working 50% for 5 years or something, the CVs would look very different. But we try and the panels take that into account. And the panel chair will be Anne-Marie Keenan, who's associate dean, and I'll be co-chair. So with quite a number of other people who are very experienced on our panels.
Thank you, Waljit. I think you've answered very clearly as well. The second part of Claire's question, which was, and do you expect to see a substantial amount of postdoctoral peer-reviewed publications? It's going to be contextual, as Waljit said, Claire. And I think something that Waljit is very keen to bring in, has brought into NIHR Academy scrutinising of awards, is we need to understand the context of someone rather than it must be, X number of publications and so many criteria. I may be so wrong. Okay. We've now got a question from Jessica Bate. How many awards will be made annually, and will these be split across professional groups? Yes, they will be split across professional groups, as we've said, and we've talked about that already. So it started off very much as HCPs, and we've talked as well that specialisms around medicine with justification and dentistry are eligible as well. So don't know if you want to talk about how you might work in the committee, Waljit, to give a bit of context to Jessica.
Yeah, so I think we've got funding for 75 awards per year. This won't be a single round, so we're very pleased with that. So there's quite a high number of awards. If quality is there, we will aim to fund 75 awards. We again have, we're aiming, as I kind of said, with a figure in our head, to fund about 2/3 of them we think would go to healthcare professionals if the quality is there, which we hope there will be. And 1/3 might go to underrepresented medical specialties. In terms of professions, we would like, the ideal would be we get, a bit of everybody funded. So we definitely will be taking that into account in terms of geography. We did think about, as I said, a cap on number of applications per institution, but that becomes complicated in terms of, are you a trust, are you a university, are you an area? And it may be, that can lead to other unintended consequences. So we've left it open. We have no idea how many applications we're going to get, but I think it's going to be a large number from what Richard said so far, which we're thrilled about. And we will then score the applications according to the criteria that's kind of set out in the guidance. And then hopefully that will lead to a nice geographical and professional spread, because this is all about increasing capacity in health and social care. So and underrepresented groups.
Well,
thank you.
Thank you.
I'll pass the next question to Richard. Can the costs include research assistant support costs?
So the answer to that is no for this particular award. As has been alluded to in other answers, the focus of the award is very much around the individual. It's around the development of the applicant and your needs and aspirations. So that's what we're looking for in applications, I suppose you could say. And of course, there are other awards that James has mentioned, such as things like the Advanced Fellowship and the ACAF, where you can include those sorts of costs. So if you're looking to do something along those lines, we'd very much encourage you to look at the different options that are out there to try and identify the one that best suits what you're looking to do.
And actually, the CARP probably would be the closest to this scheme for that, because I've sat in the CARP panel since the beginning. And again, we built the plane as we were flying it, really. It used to be a 3-year scheme. It's now a 5-year scheme following the feedback. It didn't used to cover research costs. It now does. So it's moved into a kind of half-time, up to half-time full fellowship, if you like, with maintaining clinical practice. And the Advanced Fellowship is the same, but 100% research time with some protected clinical time.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't see that any of the others are necessarily particularly upvoted more than others. So if any of you would like to see any of the remaining questions as a preference, please do continue to upvote questions. Do we want to just sort of start tackling through some of these in order? We are coming towards the end of our time here. But has anyone noticed any particular ones that you think are a key that we should highlight?
Seeing them at the top there, I don't understand. So I am. Oh, it's moved. It's all just moved again. So I'm a Black British female working in NHS. I am also a medical doctor with a PhD. Am I able to apply? Absolutely, I would say. This is a postdoctoral award, and there should be no barrier to you applying for this. So again, after looking at the criteria and looking at that, but feel free to contact us, Hugh. But absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, from reading this, you would be, wouldn't you agree, Waljit?
Yeah, and I think for anybody who's on the blurred area, it's worth contacting the team and asking. But the important thing, if you're going to put an application, is what we're going to be looking for particularly is is those kind of things. Is what will this award do for that individual? And so are they in an underrepresented profession, or ethnicity, or anything else? And what will the impact be? So it's slightly different from a standard award, because that question is going to be the key. So if you're, as I said, somebody in histopathology, for example, that's very underrepresented, and so it's making the justification, and I'm making it up. But if I was in histopathology, for example, I might say there are only X professors in the country, and we need more of them, and it's clearly a very important area with AI coming, etc., etc. So just make the case for your health or social care background of why, and clearly social care obviously is very underrepresented. So we'd be very keen to see applications from social care, for example. Don't think it'd be very difficult for you to make a case there. But for medical specialties particularly, make the case of why you, either as an individual or the profession, is underrepresented.
Thank you. So thank you very much for those of you that are voting on your referenced questions. So if you're unsuccessful, will it be possible to reapply in future rounds?
James, you want to take that? We normally say 2, don't we?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So the answer is yes, and we haven't had to put it in the guidance notes yet because we've only had 1 round. But yeah, we normally say 2, absolutely. So we'd probably go with that. But the answer is yes, certainly for next round. Do you want to take the next one, Richard?
This is, I have Morag, so thank you for your question, Mark. So I have some funded research time through grants, HTA as co-CI, but I'd like to apply for this award to help develop my independent research career in a complementary area. Would this grant funding, currently 1.5 days with 3 days in NHS, be a disadvantage to my application?
I think that's a good question. I mean, I think if it depends on, I don't think it's a bar. And again, it's saying what, as you said, Richard, what difference would that day or whatever you're applying for make in addition to the research you're already doing? But I think if I'm looking at that application versus somebody who's got no research time and wanted to come back, it might score lower based on how much difference in terms of research leader that would make. But it would be articulating what that extra day means. So I wouldn't be put off, but be very clear that the 1.5 days I am delivering a HTA grant doing X, Y, and Z, and this 1 day a week would allow me to, and I think it's a good point that they mentioned at the end, which is to develop my research career independently. So you could say, I don't know what the situation is, but you could say I'm a research associate or something delivering Richard's trial, and it's been good, but actually I'm doing research for Richard, and actually what I want to do is research for myself, and this day a week would help me transform into an independent researcher. So that would make that much stronger. So it's, again, articulating what this award's going to do for you if you've got some research time already.
Thanks very much.
One we can answer very quickly from Jessica. Thank you again, Jessica. Will the application involve interviews and presentations, or will it be solely scored on the application form? Absolutely. So there's no interviews or presentations. It's not a fellowship as such. So as we run them, so it'll be judged on your application form by the selection committee, chaired by Professor Anne-Marie Keenan and co-chaired by Waljit.
So next question that we have, can you apply for this award if you already have research as a substantial part of your role? Are there limits on the percentage of time on research in your current role?
You want to take that one, James?
Yeah, no, I was just thinking about this. Thank you. I suppose, again, it depends on the context of your research, of your role, and what you're looking for this award to give you, because this award is set up in a way to help you develop your research career. And again, I don't know the context, so you may have. It sounds like you've got quite a substantial research component to your role already. So I think you just probably need to think about it. It might be one you want to talk to us in more detail about if you want to follow this up. Again, I think it depends on the context, doesn't it, Waljit, really?
Yeah, and again, it's added value of a bit like the last question, really. If you're already doing quite a lot of research, fantastic. That's what we want this scheme to do. So are you already there? So it would be articulating what this additional time would do. And we do want people to maintain their clinical work in the broader sense. And the reason we've maintained that clinical work is often for healthcare practitioners, they have to leave their health role and they do one or the other. And that isn't, we don't think, the greatest model, and doesn't provide the maximum flexibility. And often the clinical work drives the research questions, and it becomes full circle. So we're very keen to see people embedded in health and social care who doing research.
Yeah, I guess just as a sort of addendum, we'd also very much encourage you to speak with your mentorship team about any sorts of arrangements and with all aspects really of your application form. They are very much well placed to guide you in those sorts of respects.
Sorry, Richard, just one thing to add as well. I kind of mentioned it earlier in the assessment criteria. We are keen that this is not just a 5-year, opportunity. We did think about mandating organisations to give you projected research time at the end of the award. We decided not to do that in the current financial climate because everybody's stretched. But we would hope that if people do well in this, that their institutions would support them and they'll get grants and etc. And people who articulate that with support from the host institution in the application form, that will be helpful. Because we can then, again, in terms of value added, if the host organisation is saying we would support this person post-award with a day a week or 2 days a week or whatever, that would be very helpful because it tells the panel that the host institution is committed to the individual.
Yeah. So we are starting to run short on time now, but we've probably got time for a couple more questions if you're happy to do that. So next up from Debbie Clark, who would fund the research project? Is this expected to come from the employer or be part of a collaboration?
So I think the expectation here would be that the reason we started with 100K is it's not a massive amount, but it's a reasonable sum to get you going. And then it would either be your partner organization or applying for another grant. The idea is this buys your protected time, gives you some money to get going. And as I said, there's going to be complete flexibility with that 100K. You can use it all in the first year. You can use it in the last year, however it works for you. And it might be that, if you're looking for, a reasonable study to do, that you might apply for example, in the first year, an RFPB grant. So it's just making very clear what you would do with the time and what your plans will be, even though they might not be 100% concrete. And of course, you might not get your RFP grant first time, but the research costs, the 100K costs essentially are there to get you pump primed and started. And then it's applying for grants or other funding, or if you've got somebody you're working with who's really got funding for a particular project, that can be flexible.
Thanks, Waljit. And then from Pascale, are you eligible to apply if you have held one of the other NIHR awards, e.g. DSE or Advanced Fellowship?
Not ineligible, I would say, but I think, again, as we talked earlier, Pascal, it's about the context, I think. So if you've probably got an advanced fellowship already, you're probably on a trajectory beyond where this award is, but that's not always the case. But again, I think you need to think about it. DSE maybe, but I think you're on a slightly different trajectory. So you probably just need to think about it. Again, as Richard said, people talk to us about it, but talk to your mentors, for example, and just think about where you're going with this. Because I think the advanced fellowship is kind of running in parallel of this in a different way. I don't know if Waljit wants to, or Richard want to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, James, that the advanced fellowship, our data suggests that basically people on an advanced fellowship, certainly at the senior end, 100% will be in chairs within 5 years of the end of it. So you're on a, this would be much earlier in that career journey. Again, I think as James says, it's articulating why you need this award and how you'd score compared to others who are perhaps earlier in the research journey with no research opportunity.
Thank you very much. Do we want to try and squeeze one more in, or
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's go for it.
All right, let's do it. So, um, is it possible to allocate a portion of this grant to cover the training expenses of other colleagues we aim to involve in the research?
This is a bit like the research assistant question, isn't it? Because obviously this is a personal award, and it's really about developing yourself.
Yeah.
So I think in this case, probably not. Obviously, as I said, we're all very invested and interested in research capacity development. But I think in this case, the answer probably would be no.
That's right. Yeah.
Should we just quickly do Caroline's next one? If you have a part-time job, can you apply to fill the gap to build a bigger WTE rather than 50% of your current WTE? I'll do my maths now.
Yeah, I think they're kind of saying if you're doing 3 days a week, can you top up with 2 days a week with research time? I think that would be fine.
Yeah, thank you, Waljit.
And actually, it's probably easier to do that than it is to try and backfill, because often, if you're doing a 100% job and you're giving up half time, trying to find the backfill can sometimes be difficult. Actually, there's probably an easier way to do it, to be honest, because you're not working those 2 days and you will be doing the research. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's I guess the key is how you frame that in your application and make it very clear what you're doing and how much time you're spending on the various activities. Brilliant. Well, given that we are coming to the end of our time, it's probably we should probably wrap up. So just to be clear, we'll note all of the questions that you've asked. So thank you very, very much to everyone for all your excellent questions. Appreciate we've not been able to answer absolutely all of them, but what we're going to do, we're compiling a frequently asked questions document, and we're going to be publishing that on the NIHR website in due course, and making that available. So we'll try our very best to include as many of your questions as we possibly can there. And also to say a recording of the webinar is also going to be made available on the NIHR YouTube channel. Brilliant. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone. Thanks to James and Waljit for all your fantastic insights today. And thanks very much to everyone for joining us today.